Hey, let's talk about frame. What is frame when it comes to psychology or your mental makeup? So, there's this idea that you can only think so many things at a time, right? And these things you can think of are how you're limited. That's my brother in the background shooting. Pardon if that's too noisy. But anyway, as far as frame goes, you have so many things you can think about in life, right? As far as what is the way that the world works, what is the power structure, who is in charge, what is important, and you make all your decisions based off of that frame, right? Now, when you are trying to survive, you have to figure out what is it that is the system that you're in order to make the best decisions towards your survival and towards you continuing on as a human. So, when you're navigating the world and first figuring it out, you have to build a paradigm or some type of structure that you have to work inside of. This is this frame that I'm talking about. Now, there are a lot of people in the world, they live in other people's frames. Now, what does that mean? So, when you are trying to make the best decisions, you may think that someone is in charge and has the authority over how everything works, that they're the ones who have the final say, right? So, if, for example, a lot of people take this as governments, or it could be something like um, maybe a teacher in a school, some type of authority figure. You fall under their frame, right? They set the tone, the pace, what is acceptable, what is not acceptable, right? Now, because of this, you will shape your whole life to fit within it. And the decisions you make will be maybe not what's best for you, but what you think is acceptable, or what you think is the thing that is, let's say, conducive to your survival. So if I am, let's say, a kid, I will immediately assume my parents' frame as a child, which is good. It's something that's very helpful because you don't necessarily have the best understanding of the world or how things work. So you need someone as a guide to kind of show you what to do. And you don't really try to figure things out 100% for yourself. You just listen to other people. Now, this is, a gradual thing. When kids are very, very young, it's very hard to get them to do anything. The younger they are, some people say it's because they're more tapped into God, or some people say it's just because they're kids and they're dumb. They just don't know yet. But they have that very creative energy, or that very, you know, youthful, spiritual kind of expression. Now, here's the thing. As you get older and you fall into frames, you end up basing a lot of your reality on opinions of just certain people. So, oh, there's a car coming. I got to get over. One sec. Okay. Anyway, so a type of frame you could fall into is like a religious frame, right? Or you could fall into um, maybe what's trending or something like that. Oftentimes you see teenagers or kids, they fall into frame of what is trending when they're young, like 13 to 18 or something like that. And whatever is cool or the fad, they take it as the new structure. And they think that's the way to attain higher status and to end up, having success in life because they're with the times, the new power structure that's developing. And so you may see like young kids try to establish that they're a part of this new frame or power structure by wearing clothing that is trendy, right? Like whatever the new hairstyle is, the new pants, or owning whatever car is considered cool at the time. This would be someone falling into frame. Now, if you're someone who's, let's say, thinking for yourself, you may not go along with what is trendy. You would instead end up maybe picking something that just makes sense or fits for your needs or purposes, right? This is a different way of living. Now, what's interesting is naturally all humans are going to fall into frame. This would be the NPC type humans or the people that, are just considered the sheep or normies, something like that. Well, this is something that can be very detrimental because let's say, for example, you could talk about World War II. You have the people who were, well, a part of some very evil, wicked things. However you want to talk about what happened. There were many people committing heinous crimes against humanity, right? Genocide and all types of things. Why did everyone go along with that who were a part of those nations? Now, you could say that some of them just didn't know what was happening or something like that. But, the bigger thing is a lot of them did, but they would rationalize it out. This is called cognitive dissonance. This frame that they're falling into, right, is trying to survive. They're trying to be people who are going with the in-group preferences, as they call it. And it's all the same thing, whether you're having clothing that you're trying to follow a trend or you're going along with a political, let's say, breeze or kind of whatever is just the thing to do at the time. And if you are someone who naturally is in frame in life, you're not necessarily going to do things for your larger benefit. You're going to end up just kind of becoming whoever the people in authority want you to be. It's very dangerous because it's not necessarily for your best or for everyone else's. So with that being said, they did a lot of experiments. The Milgram experiments were one where they had people who would come in for a study and they told them it was a medical study, something to do with psychology, and that they were to sit down and operate a machine and ask a series of questions to a participant. They were actually there to help with the study. They didn't know that they themselves were the person being studied. And a part of this was they had to sit and ask a series of questions to someone in another room through a microphone. And then if they got a question wrong, they were to electrocute them. Pretty wild. So with that being said, the participants, right, people who are getting the questions asked, they would intentionally answer the questions wrong. And when they did this, they were told to go ahead and shock the other person.
A decade earlier, psychologist Stanley Milgram had also looked at how we respond to authority. In order to understand how people were induced to obey unjust regimes and participate in atrocities such as the Holocaust, he set up an experiment. Volunteers were told they were taking part in scientific research to improve memory.
Would you open those and tell me which of you is which, please? Teacher. Learn. Teacher.
Separated by a screen, the teacher would ask the learner questions in a word game and administer an electric shock when the answer was incorrect. He was told to increase the voltage with each wrong answer.
Cloud. Horse. Rock. House. Answer. Wrong. 150 volts. Answer. Horse.
Oh. Experiment, that's all. Get me out of here. Get me out of here, please.
Continue, please. Go right on.
I refuse to go on. Let me out.
You refuse to go on? The experiment requires you continue, teacher. Please continue.
Participants didn't know that the learner was really an actor and the so-called shocks harmless.
You're going to get a shock. 180 volts.
Oh. I can't stand the pain. Let
I'm not going to kill that man, there. I mean, who's going to take the responsibility if anything happens to that gentleman?
I'm responsible for anything that happens here. Continue, please.
All right, next one, slow. Walk, dance, truck, music. And
2/3 of volunteers were prepared to administer a potentially fatal electric shock when encouraged to do so by what they perceived as a legitimate authority figure. In this case, a man in a white coat.
375 volts. I think something's happened to that fellow in there. I don't get no answer. He was hollering a less voltage. Can't you check in and see if he's all right, please?
Milgram's findings horrified America. They showed that decent American citizens were as capable of committing acts against their conscience as the Germans had been under the Nazis.
So they would shock this other person, and when they would do it, they had different settings on how high of a voltage that they would shock the other person in the other room. Now, when they successively got more questions wrong, they were told to up the amount of voltage that they were shocking the person with so that they would be incentivized to get the questions right more. Well, the amount of volts they had put this up to was something like 400 something volts, plenty of enough to kill somebody. And when they would successfully do higher voltages, they would end up, hearing from the person in the other room way more pain and agony as the voltage went up, and they would scream and they would plead for them not to shock more, but they would do it all the way up to the point of where people would be shocked, and then they would just stop responding after they got up to really high voltages. And what was funny was is that the person who was doing the shocking sometimes would hesitate as it went up, and they would ask the person running the experiment if they should keep going because it seemed dangerous or something like that. But because the person running the experiment was a scientist and they were in a white lab coat with a clipboard, their authority projected a frame that caused the people who were the real participants to continue shocking people. And they didn't question it. Almost everyone failed in the study to not shock the person to the point of them dying. And what this shows is that people will fall into whatever frame the perceived authority is projecting because they think that they have to do that to survive. They have to be a part of the in-group preference. Now, this is where it gets really interesting. There's a ton of other studies, the Osh experiments. There's a lot of experiments that have to do with body posture and all these other things. But what's important is that nearly everyone would fail this, and they realize that pretty much the majority of the population is just going to do whatever the governments tell them to, doctors tell them to, teachers or lawyers, etc., because they assume that they're the ones who hold the power, right? Or the authority, or maybe you could even say they might argue, well, they know what they're doing, they're competent, all this other stuff, so I should trust them. But what it really comes down to is people just want to survive, and they're willing to go to the extent of doing whatever it is the person who is the tribal leader says they should do. Now, what's interesting is there is very few people who will not fall for this. And it comes down to two categories. The first, which is interesting, is people who have schizophrenia. So if you are somebody who is hyper paranoid and you think that everyone is out to get you, you will not listen to anybody. You will question everything. You will ask, why should I listen to this person? Why is this person doing this? What is the reason for this? You see boogeymen around every corner. Some people have schizophrenia. They think that the CIA is always watching them and sending people to follow them, or they think that the sun is following them. Very common for people with schizophrenia to think the sun is following them where they're going. Everything is out to get them. Hyperparanoia. The second group of people who will not fall into just anybody's frame, and this is extremely interesting, are people who believe in a higher power. Now, think about this. This is very important. People who believe that there is something greater than themselves or more important than themselves will not fall into just any frame. Now, what does that mean? Well, it can be a lot of different things, but the point is that they are not looking externally for permission to do things. They are actually looking internally. Now, how is this done? Well, one, you could be very religious and you could believe in some type of divine conduct or some type of idea on how you're supposed to live based off of how a God has told you to. This is someone who will look at everything based off a paradigm of what they're projecting the world should be, not just perceiving what they should be based off what the world is. They are a judger. They are not a perceiver. That's a little bit of Myers-Briggs terminology. Now, the other could be something as simple, or if you have a code of conduct or an honor system, something that's more akin to maybe something like the Asian Japanese or the Vikings, something like that. People who are very obstinate types, like maybe the Irish, who are always getting into fights and they care about honor, they care about family, their clan, things like that. Those are people who will not turn into an automaton. This is something that I think is very important for everyone, is to learn how not to just think of the world as a godless place with no spirituality, no higher purposes. If you're one of these people, you will be victim to committing atrocities. You will listen to whatever it is you're told to do, and you will not be better off for it. You are probably one of those people who their soul would not be saved, more or less. And I think this is the foundation of what a lot of religions are. So with that, you need to learn how to find a higher thing than you. For me, the highest is truth. Truth is my God. And you may say that that's an odd thing, but at the end of the day, if truth is the highest aim, then I can't be wrong about which God I follow, which philosophy I follow, because if truth is my measure for what is real or what is right, then I will end up finding the right God and I will end up finding the right philosophy, because I am only interested in what is real. This is something I might suggest that you consider for yourself. Hey, that's it for today's video, and thank you. Have a good one.